Okay, this video is for our block assembly. So what we're going to do is open up our student folder and navigate to our period and go to our block assembly folder. And you should have your parts saved in a folder. So we'll need to open up our project file first, this guy right here. And I'm going to open up from where mine is. Okay, so it's going to open up Inventor. And what you'll need to do is make an assembly. So we're going to click this button here. Once this comes up, then you're going to go to this first button that says Place. If you do not see that, click the bottom half of the button and select Place out of this drop-down menu. What you're going to navigate to is your student folder where your parts are saved. So you should have 3 parts. I made them all so I can use them. I'm going to start with making some cubes put together. So I'm going to pick my cube file and I'm going to click open. And what I'm going to do is place a few cubes in here. So I can click and put multiple cubes in. And when I'm finished, I can press escape on the keyboard or click on the right mouse button and select OK. So I'm going to need to assemble these. Now I can move them around and I can put them side by side, but they're not really assembled. So what I need to do is I'm going to use some special commands to tell it how it should go and be put together. Before I do that, the first part I'm going to work with, I'm going to select it so it has a red outline, and I'm going to right click on it. On this menu, I need to select grounded. What that does to a part is it holds it in place to keep it from going anywhere. So now when I put my mouse over that part, it has a little tack through it. That means that it's not going to move. It's grounded. So if I click on it and try to move it, it's not going to move. That's a good thing. I only want to do that with one part because then if I do it to multiple parts, I can't move and put things together. This just keeps these parts from moving around on the screen. So we just need one part grounded. At the top of your screen, in the constrain menu here, we're going to click that, and that has the options of how to assemble our parts. So before we worked with constraints with some shapes, the first activity we did in Inventor, where we told the shapes how to align themselves either vertically, horizontally, make something tangent, change the size. This is going to do the same thing, except we're working with 3D objects. So there's 5 different types of constraints. There's a mate, there's an angle, a tangent, an insert, a symmetry. Within each one, there's multiple solutions. So for instance, the mate type, there's a mate solution and there's a flush solution. We're going to use both of those for our cubes. The mate solution is like putting 2 surfaces together, like you're going to glue them together. So usually that's going to work with a flat surface or an edge. So in our case, we're going to put 2 of these flat surfaces of the cubes together. So I'm going to pick one of the faces of the cube and I will assemble it and put it together with the other face of the other cube. They go together, but if we look underneath, they're not lined up. We didn't tell it to be aligned up, we just told them to go together. So there's a gap here between those 2. That's okay. Once I am finished with that one step, I'll want to click apply. If I forget to do that, then it's not going to stick and hold. So the next thing I need to do after I put the 2 surfaces together is I need to make them flush. And what a flush does is it aligns 2 surfaces together and makes them side by side like we're going to see here. So I'll turn my block so we can see. So there's this part sticking up. I want these 2 tops of the cubes to be even. So I'm going to pick the top of one cube, pick the top of the other cube, and it slides them together, and both these colored surfaces are side by side. which is exactly what a flush does. I'll click apply. Then I need to do the sides and make those even. So now they're lined and they're side by side. So now that I have two cubes assembled, now I'm going to go ahead and put in some other parts. So I'm going to pick my cube with the hole, I'm going to pick the cylinder, and I'll pick the prism. And I'll place all three of those in. So I'm going to move these out of the way. I'll use those later. So now I'm focused on just these three pieces. So the next thing is I want to use this hole block with a hole in it. Now I want the block so that the hole faces up, not towards the side. So in the constrain menu, I'm going to mate two surfaces together that I want side by side. So let's say I want this surface against this surface. I'll apply that mate, but then I need this hole to face upwards. So using the flush command, I'm going to pick this surface of my cube with the hole, and I want it to be side by side with the top of this cube. So it's going to flip this cube and have it face upwards. So now these two surfaces are side by side and they're even with each other. And then I need to make these two surfaces even with each other. So I click one, click two, they slide together and they are side by side. So that's how you can rotate things, is by using that flush command, and it will turn things and make things side by side and even. So you may need to use that for your wedge as well, which we'll use next. Let's go grab that. Okay. So the wedge shape, I'm going to use my mate command, and I'm going to mate, let's say I need to mate this surface to this surface. Okay. But let's say it's upside down. So I don't want the angled part being face down. That's when I use the flush again. So what I'll do is I'll click the flush command, and I'm going to pick what should be the back of the block, this, and I want to make it flush or side by side with this side of the block. And that turns our wedge and makes it upright. Click apply. I'm going to look at the bottom of our shapes, and I'm going to use the flush to make those even. So now everything lines up nice and neat. Okay, the last one I'm going to use is my cylinder. And with the cylinder, this first one I'm going to show you is I'm going to place the cylinder on top of these cubes. So what you'll need to do here is we're going to make the cylinder sit right on top of the cube so it'll be centered. So like how it looks now, looking at it from above. So if we look at this, the circle looks like it's inside the square shape. Okay, so it's on the outside now, on the inside now. So we want to stack it on top. So what we'll do with a circular shape is in the constrain menu, we're going to use the tangent type. Tangent is for circular shapes. And there's an inside and outside solution. So our circle was on the inside of the square, so I'm going to choose the inside solution. I'm going to pick the rounded edge of the cylinder, and I'm going to pick the side of the cube, so not the top, but the side. And if we do that, the cube's going to be with the cylinder inside of it. So what I need to do first is I click cancel if I mess up, because I actually need to mate those together. So I'm going to pick this surface and this surface to make those go together, and then I'm going to use my tangent. Use the inside tangent. Click. and click. And it makes these two edges lined up. Click apply. Now I need to make these two edges lined up. Click my cylinder, click this side of the cube, and it lines everything up. So now when I look at my cylinder on the top, it's perfectly centered inside the box here. Okay. Now if I want my cylinder to be on the outside next to the box, I will place another cylinder in and I'll click, and I will need to do something a little different. For this I'll need to use the outside constraint, outside solution, because the cylinder's on the outside of the box. So we want it side by side, like so. So I'm picking the cylinder, turn it the right way, do that again. Pick the cylinder, the side of the cylinder, and I'm going to put it next to the block like this. Click apply, and then to get everything lined up, if you look at it from the top, this isn't lined up going across. So I need to use the inside constraint, and I'm going to pick the side of the cylinder, and I'm going to pick this side of the cube, the side I want to line it up with. And now, if we look at it from above, it's lined up along the bottom here. And then the last thing I need to do, because if we look at it going this way, it's not even here. So I'm going to look at the bottom of the assembly, and I'm going to go back, because the bottoms of these are flat, I'm going to use the flush and make those even. And click apply. So as you're working, all the shapes, as they get assembled, they should not move and go anywhere. So if I click on any of these, they're not going to move. The cylinders will spin because we didn't tell them not to spin, but everything else should stay still. So your job is to make your assembly based on your drawing or what you're given, and to put together these parts accordingly. So this video just shows you how those commands work. You'll have to work and figure out how yours specifically will go together. Once we're finished, then we'll need to save this. So we'll go to Save As, and then we'll need to go to your student folder, and we'll need to navigate to where your parts are, and we'll need to save this as the block assembly. Go to period 8, or whatever your period is, wherever your stuff is supposed to be saved, block assembly, and go to your folder. And our parts should be in here. Mine are in a different spot. And save our now assembly file in with where our parts are.